It is not about the war, it is not about Iran, it is not about President Maduro who was picked up by the United States. The main war is how to stop the Chinese from taking over the world as the number one nation. Actually, wars are never fought in the battlefields, but are fought in the boardrooms. There are terrorist organizations which are funded by different governments, by the war lobby, and those war lobbies, they initiate action. There are a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. Once they lose their jobs because the companies are not functioning. Donald Trump has announced that he'll be spending 1.5 trillion US dollars on the defense. It has never happened in the history of the United States of America. And if this continues, America is in a huge financial mess and it will not be able to control. Welcome to Viewpoint Vortex. I am your host Yashwant Varsha. We had been running a series on the world of finance. Today we'll be talking about the business of war. And today is the final episode on the world of finance. Why we are talking about war is that because defense and pharma are the two industries that actually rule the finances of this planet. And today we are taking up the business of war. If you think that the wars are fought in the battlefield and there is a confrontation because there are two parties which are not agreeing on a topic, then you are totally wrong. Actually, wars are never fought in the battlefields, but are fought in the boardrooms. There are the experts who sit down and plan a war of the stakeholders. And there is a very important quotation in this context which says, if you want peace, prepare for war. If you are strong, nobody is going to bully you. Nobody tries to bully a strong nation. Like, for example, North Korea. North Korea is a strong nation and nobody has dared, even the United States does not muster the courage to attack or to say anything to North Korea. While on the case of Iran, much has happened. But we'll not talk about this right now. We'll go ahead. Now, there are different case studies of the recent conflicts. Basically, if you see all the conflicts in the world, they're divided into three main categories. The first is the problem faced. Now, what is the problem that the countries are facing? Is it a problem that has erupted on its own, or it is a problem that has been created? Much of the problem has been created. There are terrorist organizations which are funded by different governments, by the war lobby, and those war lobbies, they initiate action. The second is the solution offered. Now, what can be the solution if there is a war? The solution is that peace should set in. When the peace sets in, there are a lot of stakeholders that, like vultures, they pounce upon the country. Now, there are people who are from the real estate, there are people from the pharma industry, there are people from the defense industry. So the fear psychosis is created. Once the fear psychosis is created, there are big, massive arms deals that takes place. The third is the benefits. Now, if we take the benefit is only to the people who are the stakeholders. There is no benefit to the politician, because the politician is in the post for a temporary time. The second is the people, because the people are on the receiving end. They are already crushed by high inflation and the amount of damage that has taken place. A lot of people have lost their lives, etc. So the benefit is basically to the war lobby. And by war lobby, what I mean is the companies that are manufacturing the arms and armaments. Now, the economic consequences of a conflict. See, all the wars are basically, as I said, are fought in the boardrooms. There are different consequences for any conflict. Main is the GDP loss. The loss of a country on its GDP. The GDP plunges down. Second is the unemployment. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. Once they lose their jobs because the companies are not functioning, the labor market becomes massive. Now, when the labor market becomes massive, naturally the cost of labor falls. The third is the inflation rate. Now, inflation rate for many is a thing of a worry because everything becomes expensive. But if you take on the hand of the government, in high inflation also means that it is easier to pay back the loans. Fourth is crushing public and opposition dissent. Many countries have adopted this method that when they are in trouble internally, they try to go in for a war with or a small skirmish in the border so that the local opposition inside the country is crushed and all the people support their government with the nationalistic feelings. Then the public debt increases because naturally people are not able to pay back the loans and the insurance companies start collapsing. Foreign investment runs away. If you want to find out that in case if the country is safe enough or not, just try to find out that in the last 6 months, are the foreign institutional investors and the foreign direct investment, are they pulling out the money or are they investing? If they're investing, there cannot be a war. And if they're pulling out the money, definitely you take it as a written that definitely there is something that is in store which is going to be a surprise for the general people, but the governments have already decided at the back. Then infrastructure damage. There is a lot of infrastructure damage, and to rebuild those infrastructure, definitely a lot of companies from real estate to metro to railways to roadways to etc. different type of companies, they all will pounce upon and they get the global contracts. Increase military spending and defense procurement. This is the most important part of the entire consequences of the conflict, that there is an increased military spending. This year there is a phenomenal budget by the United States of America, and Donald Trump has announced that he'll be spending 1.5 trillion US dollars on the defense. It has never happened in the history of the United States of America. Now, why he is doing this? Because when there is a lot of spending on the defense, a lot of money will be poured to the different stakeholders who had helped the Republican candidate Mr. Donald Trump to come to power, and he is paying them back. So there is a lot of military spending and defense procurement. Smaller countries around the world like Pakistan or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or Malaysia or Indonesia, etc. These all countries, when there is a war happening somewhere, they all try to spend more money due to fear psychosis, and the defense procurement starts multiplying. For example, I would also like to give an example of France. France is a country with just 6 crore population, and they are the people who are supplying Rafale jets. So the Rafale jets, when different countries are putting in the order, if you pay today, don't expect that you will be getting the Rafale at the end of the year. Maybe there is a waiting period of 2 to 3 years. That too in case if you are a big buyer, otherwise you can be turned back and made to wait for the next 4 to 5 years. Then there is the medical and insurance spending. There is a massive scam in this, that a lot of money is pumped into the medical industry, and people who have fallen sick, people who have been injured, they try to go in to take the insurance. And of course, a lot of money is generated both by the medical fraternity as well as by the insurance stakeholders. Excuse to introduce stricter laws. There have been cases of governments allowing a particular terrorist act to happen just because they wanted to get a strong law in the country, and a strong law associated with gagging the public, it makes the free speech impossible. And finally, there are different other, like we put in under the heading of miscellaneous, that there are people who make a lot of money in war. A very small example is that without naming the gentleman, there was a gentleman on the 28th of February 2026 when the United States attacked Iran. Just 4 days after, there was one businessman who purchased crude oil to the value of 20 million US dollars. And after 4 days, he sold the very same thing for 50 million US dollars. So that gentleman made a profit of $30 million just in a span of 4 days. Now, SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis is one of the best methods told by Mr. Philip Kotler, and this is there in the book Principles of Management by Philip Kotler. He is supposed to be the guru of marketing in the world. Now, SWOT says that strength, weakness, opportunities and threats. Now, if you want to do anything, if a country wants to go for a war, if a businessman wants to invest in some business enterprise, what he or she should do is do a SWOT analysis. Strength, weakness, opportunities and threats. All the strength associated with the project you are going to write here. All the weakness associated with the project you are going to write here. All the opportunities that you have, you're going to write here. And all the threats you're going to write here. If the strength is more than the weakness, your project is a good project. If your opportunities are more than the threats, these four categories, if you do a SWOT analysis of any investment, of any decision, even if it is to do with, say for example, today you have to go to have a dinner outside, and if you are able to do a good SWOT analysis, you will gradually be able to monitor your life much better. Now, going further ahead, now let's talk about something that is happening right now, and that is the US attack, which had happened before, was the US attack on Iraq. Now, why we are talking about Iraq is the total incremental cost of Operation Desert Shield and the Operation Desert Storm was to the tune of $61.1 billion. And out of this entire spending, the amount of $43.8 billion was paid by the countries like Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Japan and Germany. So 88% of the entire cost was borne by these stakeholders, and United States of America only had to spend just $5 billion. And in this spending, they were able to test the best of armaments, the best of jet technology, the best of Patriot missiles, etc. Now, the world's biggest defense companies, if you see just now, when there is a confrontation, there's a conflict going on between the US and Israel on one side and Iran on the other side, most of the stocks in the world are falling, the crude prices are rising, and the prices of the essential products and goods are rising in the market. So there's a high rate of inflation. Governments are very much worried. There's a rationing of petrol and diesel in a lot of countries. There's a shortage of LPG in a lot of countries. But all the defense companies are making massive profits. All the stocks of Lockheed Martin, RTX, Northrop Grumman, etc., all these companies, they are making the maximum profit. So when there is a war, when there is a confrontation or a conflict, etc., the biggest stakeholders into that are the defense manufacturers, be it in the field of armaments, be it in the fields of jet technology or etc. Now, if you see the recent wars, there was the Iran-Iraq war from 1980 to 1988. This war went on for 8 years. And by seeing the list, you will come to know that the Middle East has been a troubled region for quite a long time. Iran-Iraq war took place for 8 years from 1980 to 88. The US, UK, Australia and Poland led the attack on Iraq in 2003. And after that, the US attack on Libya took place in 1986, 2011, 2015, 2019, etc. And it was done in different bits and pieces to overthrow the civilian government there. Then there was recently a Thailand-Cambodia war. The India-Pakistan has gone on war for about 4 times. The India-China war happened in 1962. The US war in Afghanistan that lasted for 20 years. It was planned for a few months, but it extended for 20 years. Because whatever they plan, it is always extended much more. Then the Israel attack on Iran, it happened in 2024, then 2025 and again in 2026. Israel attack on the Gaza, that had been happening for a number of years. The UK war on Argentina in the Falkland Islands, that was a very short war with the least of firing. And then the India-Pakistan war for the creation of Bangladesh, which happened in 1971, the Armenia-Azerbaijan war in 2020 to 2023. A lot, if you see, a lot of portion, the troubled regions of the world has been the Gulf region. Gulf region because of the oil in it. Now, what is the ground reality of conflict? There has to be a ground reality, something that is you and us, or all of us, need to know. And just before the US-Israel strikes on Iran began on February 28, 2026, the global crude prices was trading at around $65 to $73. So the price of the crude that different countries are picking up was in the range of about $65 to $73 per barrel. But soon after the conflict started, on the 28th of February 2026, the crude price jumped to $106 per barrel and reaching up to $120 per barrel. So now definitely there were a lot. It was not that the crude oil was less. The crude oil, the ships were standing just before the Strait of Hormuz, but there were certain stakeholders who were profiting from that. And since they were profiting, so naturally when the supply is shortened and the demand is still the same, so it culminates into the price rise. And this is the time when a lot of countries actually made a lot of profit. Russia is one of them. And of course, if you see for Iran, that what Iran was selling to a country like India was, the crude was being sold for around $46 per barrel, which was much less than the international rate. 65 to 73 was the international rate, and we are getting around for $46 per barrel. And once the prices jumped, so definitely Iran, which was blocked from by the embargo put by US, it was not able to supply, and we had to look for oil from different other countries. But what Iran did was, Iran made a smart move. The smart move was that around 20 to 30% of the entire oil supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz, and it took control of that. And this planning had been done from the last 20 years, and Iran expects to earn between 60 to 80 billion dollars, because it is going to charge $2 million per ship per transit, and according to that, the total works out to 60 to 80 billion dollars. A Strait of Hormuz, from where Iran was getting nothing previously, now it will be getting 60 to 80 billion dollars per year. And the justification is that the money is to be used in nation building. Now, there is a very important aspect of this whole confrontation, and everybody talks about petrodollar, but half of the people aren't aware of what actually is petrodollar. I'll try to explain you in very simple terms. In 1973, there was an oil embargo put by Saudi Arabia. King Faisal was the head of Saudi Arabia that time, and he put an oil embargo on the United States as well as a few other countries, saying that until or unless Israel retracts from the areas that it was attacking, we will not allow the oil to go to the US economy. That time, the mode of payment was the gold standard. Now it rattled the US economy, and there was a big problem in US economy. Finally, what happened was that the Secretary of State of United States of America, Mr. Henry Kissinger, he is a very famous personality. He had a great plan in his mind. He flew down to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, met the king, and made an offer. The offer was made in June 1974, and the offer was that Saudi Arabia will supply all the oil to whomsoever it is selling in US dollars. Take the payment in US dollars, and in return, the United States would ensure the safety, security of the Saudi Arabian government, and the Sheikhdom would continue to flourish. And what they had to do was they had to allow the United States to put in their military there, and that was the best, safest method which the then government of Saudi Arabia under King Faisal thought, and they agreed about it. The second part of the agreement was that whatever the income comes, the income of Saudi Arabia, which it was getting in dollars, would be given, would be invested in the United States of America. So the amount of money which the Saudi Arabia was getting by selling oil to different countries had to be done only in US dollar. So suddenly the demand for US dollar increased, and Henry Kissinger said to King Faisal that you also convince the other nations to do the same. And OPEC, the oil and petroleum exporting countries, the OPEC agreed. And there are a lot of countries in OPEC like Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, etc. They all agreed to supply oil in return for payment in dollars only. So all of a sudden, the value of dollar, which was actually nosediving, started rising. And United States started printing those dollars by leaps and bounds, because it knew that the excess of money, whatever they had, these oil-rich nations, would be invested in the United States of America. And to give you factually, around $400 billion is the amount of investment which Saudi Arabia has done in the US economy. The day it pulls out, the US economy is going to nosedive. Now this whole war that is happening is because of the petrodollar. Now petrodollar, because in return for the sale of oil, the countries were taking payment in dollars. But the current ruler of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, he saw into the whole project, and he did not renew the deal which they had with the United States, and the deal expired on the 9th of June 2024. So when the deal expired, Saudi Arabia kept mum. So United States was in an awkward situation, because if you see in our last episode on the world of finance, I had explained that the amount of loan on the United States is to the tune of $39 trillion. And the amount of interest on this loan which the United States has to pay now is $1 trillion per annum. It means 1,14,000 US dollars per American is the amount of loan on the United States of America. If America is not able to do something for it right now, this is going to keep on increasing. China has learnt about it. Now what China has done in the last 7 to 8 months is that it has sold those treasury bonds. The amount of treasury bonds was approximately $1.32 trillion with China. It has halved that. So even if you see recently, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, what he did was that the amount of gold of France kept in US, he sold all the gold in New York itself, and by the money he purchased the gold in Europe. That was a highly smart move, because the stability of the prices of the gold should be there in Europe according to the NATO countries. They are not concerned of what it is going to be in the United States of America. So the entire gamut of activities rolls around the petrodollar, and by now you must have got the point that petrodollar means that all the oil sold by different countries, the payment had to be received in the form of dollars, which now they have started by the new concept, which Iran is saying that all the oil that is passing through the Gulf of Hormuz will have to be paid in the Chinese yuan. It simply means that the importance of dollar is being clipped, and if this continues, America is in a huge financial mess which it will not be able to control. So it is not about the war, it is not about Iran, it is not about the President Maduro who was picked up by the United States. The main war is how to stop the Chinese from taking over the world as the #1 nation. So what President Donald Trump had said when he took over as the President of the United States, he said MAGA. MAGA means the American nation is going to be again the #1 nation in the world. And for that, he is ready to do anything. And this is one of the most important moves, that he has to bring back dollar as the main currency for the sale of petrol and diesel. Because if for crude, the dollar is able to maintain it, there will be nothing like it. The amount of the need for dollar will continue, else it is going to collapse. Thank you so much. I hope you understood the whole presentation. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.